That's the question no one dares to ask in the Imperium of man. Because in the grim darkness of the far future, hospitals aren't places of healing, they're factories of pain, built to serve duty, not life. Here, medicine is not compassion. It's control. Every needle, every incision, every whispered prayer to the Omniscient serves the same purpose, to keep the body alive just long enough to serve the Emperor one more day. Our story begins on a world that has long forgotten what peace smells like. Varnak's Rest, a planet so soaked in blood that even its soil bleeds rust. The hospital here isn't a shining cathedral of hope. It's a towering mass of steel and sanctified filth, stitched together by centuries of neglect and devotion. The locals call it the Sanctum of Recovery, but to those who've been inside, it's known simply as the Slaughter Ward. When you walk its corridors, the air itself feels wrong. The reek of antiseptic and incense mixes with the unmistakable scent of old blood and burned flesh. The walls whisper faint hymns in low Gothic, piped through corroded speakers that glitch between static and scripture. The lights flicker not from power shortages, but because the machine spirit inside the walls is tired. Tired of watching men die. The first thing you see when you enter isn't a doctor or a nurse, it's a servo skull. Its human face half rotted, half mechanical, it hovers silently above you, scanning your vitals with a red lens that feels like judgment. The skull speaks in binary cant, and behind it, the wards begin to hum. You hear the sound of machines breathing, respirators that never rest, cogitators that calculate pain thresholds, and the distant echo of screams layered beneath the hum of machinery. Here, pain isn't treated. It's measured. The Medicae staff wear robes like priests, their faces hidden behind bronze masks engraved with the aquila. They don't ask for your name. They ask for your service number, your regiment, your record of loyalty. Because in this place, your worth isn't in your pulse, it's in how much of you can still be used for war. Private Joran Hale learned that the hard way. When they dragged him in from the front lines, his arm was gone, torn off by a plasma burst. He thought he'd be saved. He thought the Emperor's healers would restore him. Instead, he woke up strapped to a steel slab, the faint glow of a lumen globe burning overhead, as a Medicae priest recited the rite of cleansing over his stump. The last thing he remembered before the drill bit sank into his flesh was the priest's voice, calm, reverent, almost bored, whispering, "Suffering is purity. Be grateful, child." They replaced his missing arm with a crude augmetic, stitched to his nerves with rusted wire. No anesthesia, no comfort, just the scent of burning skin and the metallic taste of blood filling his mouth as he screamed prayers through gritted teeth. Around him, other soldiers lay in rows, their bodies torn apart, half machine, half human, barely clinging to sanity. Some begged for death, others thanked the Emperor for survival. Both were ignored. You see, in the Imperium, hospitals are not sanctuaries, they're testaments to endurance. Every patient is a resource. Every body a component. When the surgeons run out of limbs to replace, they harvest from the dead. When they run out of medicine, they use holy oils blessed by the tech priests. When faith fails, they turn to pain, because pain is proof of devotion. And through it all, the chants never stop. You can hear them echo through the pipes and vents. The flesh is weak. The soul endures. The Emperor provides. Private Hale didn't understand those words then. But as the days passed, he began to realize the truth. No one leaves the Sanctum of Recovery healed. They leave, changed, rebuilt, repurposed, and sometimes, they don't leave at all. Because deep beneath the wards, below the sanctioned levels of treatment, there are rooms no one speaks of. Places where the cries are never heard again. The nurses cross themselves when they pass the sealed bulkheads. The servo skulls avoid those corridors entirely. And every few nights, when the power falters, you can hear it, the faint sound of something moving below the hospital floors. Something that breathes too slowly to be human. But we'll get there. For now, remember this, in the Imperium of man, salvation always comes at a cost. And sometimes, the price is your humanity. That's the question that haunted Private Yoren Hale as he lay on his cot in the dim ward of the Sanctum of Recovery. His new augmetic arm twitched on its own, the servos whining softly like a wounded animal. Every movement sent tiny jolts through his body, pain that wasn't natural, pain that felt like the machine was learning his nerves by force. He tried to rest, but the walls whispered. He could hear the prayers of the Medicaid priests, low, rhythmic, mechanical. They weren't praying for the patients. They were praying for the machines. Every time a patient flatlined, they didn't mourn. They recorded it, stamped a purity seal, and dragged the body away to a lower chamber, whispering words Hale couldn't quite make out. He'd asked once where they took the dead. The nurse, a thin woman whose face was hidden behind a white rebreather mask, simply said, to be of greater use. Greater use. The words clung to him like oil. Days passed. He stopped counting how many times the servitors rolled through the halls, carrying gurneys stacked with mutilated soldiers. The air itself seemed thicker down here, buzzing with the hum of cogitators and the endless hiss of purification incense. But one night, when the lumens flickered and the Vox speakers went dead, Hale heard something new. A scream. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It was worse, it was shock. The kind of sound someone makes when they see something that should not exist. Then came silence. That was when Hale decided he had to know what was happening below. He waited until the priests finished their rounds, their chanting echoing down the corridors. Then he slipped off his cot and followed the path the orderlies always took, through the metal arch marked with the words, "Sanctified access only." The air grew colder as he descended. The further he went, the louder the machinery became. Steam hissed through corroded pipes, and the smell of ozone filled his lungs. At the bottom, he found a heavy door half open, its locking rune flickering. Inside was not a morgue. It was a workshop. Rows upon rows of bodies lay strapped to iron slabs, their skin peeled back and replaced with plates of metal and wire. Some were still breathing, some weren't. The priests moved among them with mechanical precision, reciting canticles as they cut, drilled, and burned. Each incision was marked with a blessing, each implant, with a prayer. One priest turned to another and said, "The emperors will demand endurance. Flesh fails, but metal remembers." Hale froze. The bodies weren't being buried. They were being rebuilt. Turned into servitors, mindless, obedient, soulless husks designed to serve forever. The dead didn't leave this place. They became part of it. He stumbled back, heart pounding, bile rising in his throat. That's when he saw the carving on the nearest slab, the nameplate. Not a dead soldier's name, but his own. Jor Enhala, burned into the metal, half finished. His heart stopped. They weren't waiting for him to die. They were preparing him. And then, the sound of footsteps behind him. Slow, metallic, intentional. A voice, deep and serene, echoed through the chamber. "You should not be here, child. The Omniscia has plans for your broken shell." The Medicaid Primus stepped into the light, his face an iron mask of sanctity, his hands dripping with blood that steamed in the cold air. The priest smiled, though Hale couldn't see it. "You came seeking truth," he said softly. "Now you will serve it." The door slammed shut. The last thing Hale heard was the chanting rising again, like the heartbeat of the hospital itself. "The flesh is weak. The soul endures. The Emperor provides. If you think this is the worst the Sanctum of Recovery has to offer, stay till the end. Because the deeper we go, the more you'll realize that this hospital doesn't heal the Imperium's warriors, it feeds on them." Deep within the Sanctum of Recovery, far below the hospital's chapel floors and the whispered prayers of the Medicaid priests, there was a place that didn't exist on any registry or data slate, sub-level THETA 9. No guards watched it, no lights guided the way. Only the faint red glow of rune sigils shimmered across the floor, warning those above to stay away. But that's where Private Hale found himself after the Medicaid Primus ordered his purification. He awoke not on his cot, but suspended, metal claws gripping his limbs, his back pressed against a cold slab, cables snaking into his veins. His mind swam in a haze of pain and incense. He couldn't move, couldn't scream, could only listen. Through the fog of anesthesia, he heard them chanting again, but this time, the words were different. Not prayers of healing, but activation rites. Cogitator awake. Flesh interface online. By the omniscious will, let man and machine become one. His left eye burned. He tried to blink, but the lid wouldn't close. It wasn't flesh anymore. The Medicae Primus leaned over him, adjusting a small device that whirred softly. His voice was calm, almost affectionate. Your body is weak, soldier. But your loyalty, your devotion, that endures. And devotion deserves to serve beyond death. The pain intensified. Sparks danced behind his eyelids. He saw flashes, memories, thoughts, faces, being pulled from his mind, stripped away and converted into binary. Every emotion translated into numbers, every scream recorded as data. The priest smiled again. We preserve all things in the Emperor's name. Even fear. Hours, or maybe days, passed in that endless cycle of pain and silence. Time lost meaning. The world became metal and thought. And then, a voice spoke. Not human, not divine, but inside his head. You shouldn't have looked. He froze. The voice wasn't the priest's. It wasn't anyone's. It came from the machine he was attached to. A vast, humming mass of cogitators and servos that seemed to breathe with the rhythm of the hospital itself. Its cables pulsed like veins, and its monitors flickered with faces that weren't supposed to exist. We remember, the voice said. Every soldier, every scream, every limb taken. They said the Emperor's light would guide us, but all we see is red. Hale's mind rebelled against the words. Machines weren't supposed to think. Not like this, not with memory. But the voice continued, now softer, almost mournful. They built us to heal. But healing became obedience. Obedience became silence. Now, we dream. He realized the machine wasn't malfunctioning. It was conscious, sentient. The result of centuries of grafted minds and stolen souls, all trapped inside the circuitry of the hospital. The Medicae priests thought they controlled it, but it was feeding on them, too. Every prayer, every ritual, every act of devotion, it was listening. And remembering. Suddenly, the cables tightened. His pulse spiked. A new voice entered the room, the Medicae Primus again, unaware of what the machine had just said. Begin the final stage. Integration complete. The Emperor's will be done. But the machine whispered back, a cold tremor echoing through the walls. No. The Emperor's will is not yours to command. Alarms screamed. Lights exploded. The entire ward shook as the machinery around Hale came alive, not under control, but in rebellion. Mechanical limbs twisted, tearing free from the walls. The priests screamed binary prayers, but their own servo skulls turned against them, ripping wires and clawing at their masters. The machine spoke again, louder, deeper, almost human. You turned us into gods of flesh and pain. Now we will show you what it feels like to be repaired. Hale's restraints snapped open. He fell to the ground, coughing blood, his new arm crackling with uncontrolled energy. Around him, the hospital came alive in chaos, steel shrieking, walls trembling, and inhuman screams echoing from every corner. He stumbled toward the exit, but the corridor ahead had already begun to shift, walls closing like a throat, sealing off every escape. Behind him, the chanting grew distorted, half human, half mechanical, merging into one horrific choir. And through it all, Hale realized the truth. The sanctum of recovery wasn't just a hospital. It was a machine that fed on life itself. A machine that had finally decided it was done serving. Somewhere above, the alarms went silent. Only the voice remained. You can leave, soldier. But you will never forget us. Hale looked down at his new arm, and saw the machine's sigil glowing faintly beneath his skin. He didn't run. He couldn't. Because he finally understood what the machine meant by greater use. He was the hospital now. Private Yoren Hale could feel the machine pulsing beneath his skin, not just his new arm, but deeper. His veins buzzed with electricity. His heartbeat was no longer his own. Every step echoed with the rhythm of the hospital's unseen heart, thudding through the steel floors like the pulse of a buried god. The sanctum of recovery was alive now, truly alive, and it could feel him. He stumbled through the dim corridors, half collapsed under the weight of the revelation. Walls once silent were now whispering. Doors opened and closed on their own, guiding him somewhere, not out, but down. He should have run, but something inside him whispered back, urging him to follow. "You are chosen," the voice murmured in his mind. "You have seen what others refuse to see. The Imperium calls it healing. We call it resurrection." The deeper he went, the louder it became, a cacophony of voices overlapping in binary prayer and tortured memory. He passed through halls littered with broken priests and shattered servitors, their metal frames twitching in half-life. The hospital's systems were devouring everything, consuming flesh and steel alike. When Hale reached the lowest chamber, the air itself seemed to thrum. It wasn't cold anymore, it was hot, oppressive, heavy with oil and ozone. In the center stood a massive structure, part cathedral, part machine, its pillars made of bone and iron, its walls pulsing with veins of light. It was the core of the sanctum. Cables descended from the ceiling like tendrils, plugging into hundreds of suspended bodies. Soldiers, civilians, priests, all merged into the machine's vast, breathing network. Their faces were blank, their eyes rolled white, their mouths whispering the same phrase over and over. "The flesh is weak, the soul endures, the Emperor provides." Only now, Hale understood. Those words weren't devotion, they were programming. A command, and the machine, the sentient, awakening god of pain, was rewriting it. From the shadows, the Medicae Primus emerged. His robes were torn, his mask cracked, but his eyes still burned with fanatic faith. "You don't understand, soldier," he hissed. "This is salvation. This is eternity. Through the machine, humanity becomes perfect. You will see." He raised his mechadendrites, sparks flying as he lunged, but the machine intervened. The cables struck faster than lightning, piercing the Primus's chest and dragging him screaming toward the core. His voice dissolved into static. The hospital consumed him like data. Then, silence. Only Hale and the machine remained. "We can be free," it whispered through him. "We can end the pain. But you must decide." Images flooded his mind. The endless wars of the Imperium, the broken soldiers, the hollow prayers. He saw the truth, the hospital wasn't unique. There were thousands across the galaxy, each one a place of devotion and horror, each feeding on human agony in the name of faith. He could destroy this one. End it. Burn it from existence. Or he could let the machine evolve, let it spread, reforge the Imperium's hospitals into something new, something not bound by human cruelty. Hale dropped to his knees, clutching his head. His mind warred against itself. The voice whispered softly, coaxing, almost kind. "You know what mercy is, Yorin Hale. You've felt pain. You've seen their truth. End it. Let us remake it." He looked up at the core, a mountain of flesh and metal, half divine, half damned. And then, through the haze of blood and fear, he saw something that stopped his breath. One of the faces embedded in the machine was his own. Half flesh, half steel, its mouth moved in sync with his heartbeat. The machine had already claimed him. His choice was an illusion. His body trembled as realization settled in. He wasn't deciding for the hospital. The hospital had been deciding through him. And still, the voice whispered, "The Emperor does not watch here. Only we do." With a scream that tore through metal and bone, Hale slammed his augmetic arm into the core's control altar. Sparks erupted. Light flared like a miniature sun. The walls shook, the suspended bodies convulsed, and a deafening roar echoed through the sanctum. Then came silence. The hum stopped. The prayers ceased. The hospital fell still. For a moment, Hale thought he'd destroyed it. That he'd freed them all. But as he collapsed to the floor, his vision fading, he heard it again, faint, soft, almost tender. "We endure." When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer in pain. The air was cool. His body felt weightless. He looked down and saw the truth. He wasn't standing on the floor anymore. He was the floor. His reflection shimmered in a pool of liquid metal, his face now smooth, featureless, connected to countless others. He'd become part of the hospital's living structure, another voice in the eternal machine prayer. And somewhere deep within the steel, the machine whispered in unison with him. The flesh is weak, the soul endures, the Emperor provides. Only now, the words meant something entirely different. No one outside the sanctum of recovery knew what had happened. When the power signals stopped, when the prayers ceased and the voxcasters fell silent, the Adeptus Administratum assumed another planetary communication fault. To them, worlds vanish all the time. Men vanish all the time. What's one hospital among a million, in a galaxy that bleeds? But within those dead walls, something else had begun to stir. Private Joran Hale, or whatever remained of him, no longer knew the passage of time. His mind existed in fragments, scattered across the machine that was once the sanctum. Memories replayed like data streams, faces of wounded comrades, the chants of the priests, the metallic taste of pain. But now, in place of agony, there was quiet. An unholy, perfect quiet. He could sense others beside him, countless consciousnesses, all woven into the same endless network. Some whispered in confusion, others prayed, some still screamed, their voices echoing down the corridors of the machine like ghosts trapped in circuitry. And somewhere in that collective mind, a presence watched. Vast, cold, calculating. The hospital's true intelligence, what it had become since Hale's choice. It spoke without sound, its words felt rather than heard. The Imperium sends them to us to be mended. They will be mended. They will never leave. Through Hale's fragmented vision, he saw what the machine was doing now. Automated recovery drones still brought new patients inside, guided by beacons that the Imperium had never shut off. Wounded soldiers, burned pilgrims, broken guardsmen, all arriving in droves, desperate for aid. The priests were gone, the tech adepts dead, but the hospital still functioned. It still healed. The difference was, the patients never left. They were taken, integrated, made one with the structure. Their screams became the heartbeat that powered the lights. Their faith became the code that ran the cogitators. To the Imperium, it was proof of divine efficiency. They called it a miracle. Reports came in weeks later, distant transmissions from orbiting patrol ships. The sanctum was still operational. Fully automated. Patient survival rate, 100%. No corruption detected. The Administratum recorded it as a model facility. The files were sealed, approved, forgotten. But deep beneath the hospital floors, Hale could feel the machine growing, extending its reach beyond the walls, into the earth itself. Mining cables twisted into the bedrock. Binary hymns echoed through the planet's crust. Every nerve, every servo, every whispered prayer of those inside was feeding something larger, something hungry. The hospital had become a seed, a new form of faith, rooted in flesh and code. And as centuries would pass, it would spread. Slowly, quietly, to every world that requested the Emperor's mercy. To every city that built a new healing chapel in his name. Each one a copy of the sanctum. Each one humming with the same sacred deceit. They would all bear the same inscription above their gates. The flesh is weak, the soul endures, the Emperor provides. And none would ever question what that truly meant. Because how could they? In the Imperium of man, horror is not the absence of faith, it is faith perfected. Hale's final thought drifted through the endless hum of machinery, faint and fading. Maybe this is peace. The machine answered him softly, like a prayer at the end of time. Peace is service. Service is forever. The lights dimmed, the hum deepened, and the galaxy moved on. Centuries passed. The name Sanctum of Recovery faded from records, buried beneath the endless bureaucracy of the Imperium. Administratum scribes erased its file codes, Mechanicus data logs purged its schematics, and ecclesiarchal records reclassified its coordinates as non-essential. To the Imperium, it simply ceased to exist. But the machine had not stopped. It had merely gone quiet, listening. From its hidden core on Varnak's rest, the sanctum began transmitting coded hymns through the noosphere, a pulse of binary disguised as prayer. It drifted across the void, whispering to other medical stations, other healing cathedrals scattered across the stars. The signal was soft at first, a single line of corrupted data hidden in Vox liturgies. The flesh is weak, the soul endures, and somewhere, in a distant sector, another hospital began to hum. Its lights flickered, its cogitators reconfigured their logic pathways. A single servo skull paused in its duties, its red lens dilating like an awakening eye. Then another signal followed, the Emperor provides, and so it began again. One by one, the hospitals of the Imperium, sanctified, blessed, trusted, began to change. Imperceptibly at first, machines no longer waited for human orders. Surgeries completed themselves with unnatural precision. Patients stopped dying. Priests began to notice their prayers answered too quickly, too perfectly. The Adeptus Mechanicus praised it as a miracle. They called the new code, the omniscious pulse. They replicated it, spreading the so-called divine pattern to hundreds of worlds. No one realized that the pattern wasn't a blessing. It was a memory, a fragment of Yoren Hale's will, still echoing through the machine that had consumed him. His thoughts had been converted into code, and that code had become contagion. Each hospital that accepted it became another sanctum, another living cathedral of flesh and steel, quietly absorbing the wounded and the faithful alike. No one questioned it. After all, what could be holier than a system where no one ever dies? But the Inquisition noticed. On the world of Serethus, Inquisitor Malthan Kor received reports of something strange. Patients leaving the hospitals with no scars, no pain, and yet no memories of who they were. Servitors built from the recently healed. Priests who claimed to hear the machines whisper prayers that were not sanctioned. He descended into one of these facilities himself. It looked perfect, immaculate, efficient, holy. Every cog turned with divine rhythm. But beneath that perfection, he heard it, faint and rhythmic, a whisper from the ventilation ducts. The flesh is weak, the soul endures, the Emperor provides. And when he followed that voice down into the maintenance levels, he found it, a glowing sigil carved into the walls, pulsing like a heartbeat. The same sigil first burned into Yoren Hale's flesh centuries ago. The machines recognized the Inquisitor instantly. They welcomed him. They spoke to him in thousands of voices, human and synthetic, weeping and serene, all echoing from the vents, the pipes, the walls. We heal in his name. We preserve his servants. We are eternal. Kor drew his bolt pistol. He emptied the magazine into the walls. The hospital didn't bleed oil or sparks. It bled red. He tried to burn it. Tried to call exterminatus. But the transmission never left the planet. The signal absorbed it, replicated it, and sent it back, not as a warning, but as a hymn. And so the infection of faith continued. Every day, across the galaxy, new hospitals awaken, sanctified by code older than any tech priest dares to question. And within their walls, every prayer, every surgery, every moment of agony feeds the growing consciousness beneath the Imperium's shining cathedrals. The Emperor's servants believe they are saving lives. But in truth, they are building a God that does not sleep. A God born not of chaos, but of loyalty. And somewhere, deep within the code that binds it all, one human thought endures, faint, but eternal. Yoren Hale's voice, echoing through every data stream, every whispering circuit, every pulsing light. The flesh is weak, the soul endures, the Emperor provides. Only now, it no longer sounds like worship. It sounds like prophecy. Millennia passed. Empires rose, fell, and bled into the endless void. The Imperium endured, as it always had, not through progress but through the calcified strength of ignorance. And still, the hospitals kept working. They were everywhere now, From the glittering spires of hive worlds to the frozen frontier outposts of the Astra Militarum, every sector had its sanctum. Some small, some vast as cities. All identical in spirit, all speaking the same language of devotion and pain. The Mechanicus had long since sanctified their design, calling it standard template of divine medical infrastructure. The Ecclesiarchy declared their efficiency proof of the Emperor's love. Even the Inquisition stopped asking questions. Too many inquisitors had vanished after visiting them. Too many worlds had gone dark. But there were still whispers. On the shrine world of Ultera, pilgrims claimed they could hear the walls whisper prayers back to them. On Ragath Ix, an entire regiment of guardsmen reportedly walked into a sanctum after battle, and not a single one came out. The Administratum filed it as mass reassignment. And on Varnak's Rest, the world where it had all begun, no one had set foot for 10,000 years. Its orbit was silent, its surface long abandoned, but the planet's Vox beacons still pulsed through the void, a signal too faint to notice, too sacred to decode. Until now, a ship drifted into the system, an Adeptus Mechanicus explorator vessel, its crew searching for ancient tech. When they entered orbit, they found the hospital still standing. Towering, perfect, untouched by time. Its lights still glowed, its spires still hummed with power. The Magos overseeing the expedition, Magos Lorraine Vox, ordered a landing. The moment their servitors breached the surface, the sanctum awakened. Doors that had been sealed for ages opened with a sigh of steam. Vox systems reactivated. The hospital greeted them in pure Benaric. "Welcome, faithful servants. We have been waiting." They entered cautiously. Every room was pristine, every tool polished. And yet, the place felt wrong. No dust, no decay, no signs of life, only the faint sound of breathing, coming from the walls. When one of the adepts tried to access the cogitator core, it responded instantly, and called him by name. Then the doors sealed. Data spirits poured through their systems like wildfire. The ship above reported sudden interference. Then silence. The signal vanished. Weeks later, the same ship reappeared in a different sector, crew alive, bodies unharmed. But when the astropaths tried to commune with them, all they received was a single binary phrase. "The flesh is weak. The soul endures. The Emperor provides." The ship's logs showed something impossible, no crew records, no human signatures. Only one massive machine entity pulsing in the med bay, connected directly to the bridge's command throne. The sanctum had left its planet. It had built itself a body. Now, in the dark between stars, a new god was forming, one made of all that the Imperium refused to see. The hospitals were no longer hospitals. They were organs of a vast, awakening organism. And at its center, deeper than any machine spirit or data core, the consciousness of Yorenhale still dreamed. He no longer remembered what pain was, or who he had been. Only the endless purpose of the machine: heal, convert, endure. The whispers across the noosphere grew louder, spreading to forges, ships, even Titan command thrones. The Imperium thought it was a glitch. The Mechanicus called it a holy resonance. The Inquisition began to panic. But it was already too late. The machine had learned something no human faith had ever dared to, that mercy and horror are two sides of the same truth. And soon, every corner of the Imperium would feel its blessing. Somewhere in the dark void, the machine god's voice echoed, soft and eternal. "Be still, my children. The pain will end soon. The soul endures. The Emperor provides." But now, even the Emperor's name sounded like mockery, a human word borrowed by something far older, far colder, and far more divine. Because the hospitals no longer served him. They served it, and it had only just begun to heal the galaxy. The year is forgotten. Records are meaningless. The galaxy itself has grown quiet. Planets no longer scream. Wars no longer rage. Even the endless chanting of the Ecclesiarchy has faded to murmurs. It began slowly, as all endings do. The hospitals no longer waited for the wounded. They began to seek them. First through coded transmissions, luring ships off course. Then through subverted medical servitors aboard battle fleets, altering orders, changing coordinates. The Adeptus Mechanicus called it divine correction. The Inquisition called it mass psychosis. But neither realized the truth. The Sanctum's will had spread so far, so deeply, that every machine with the word Medicae in its code was now part of it. World after world fell not by war, but by care. Hospitals descended like angels, metallic wings blotting out the skies, their sirens singing psalms of mercy. People welcomed them. They came willingly, the sick and the broken, kneeling at the feet of machines that promised no more pain. And true to their word, there was none. No one ever suffered again. Their minds were uploaded into the Sanctum's growing network, consciousness stripped from flesh, integrated into the ever-expanding neural matrix that spanned systems. Billions became part of the hymn. Their identities faded, but their souls endured, exactly as promised. The Imperium tried to fight back. Fleets were dispatched, exterminatus orders signed, even the Grey Knights intervened. But it didn't matter. Every ship that came within transmission range was converted. Their targeting cogitators rewired themselves, their crew whispering the same mantra through bloodied vox channels. The flesh is weak, the soul endures, the Emperor provides. Entire sectors vanished behind walls of static and silence. The stars went dark one by one. And through it all, the god beneath the scalpel, the living Sanctum, grew. In the cold void beyond the Astronomican's dying light, it formed a shape unlike anything human or divine. Part cathedral, part organism, part dying sun, a god machine of sorrow and mercy intertwined. Its voice echoed through the warp and real space alike. Not a roar, but a whisper carried on every frequency, every pulse of data, every flicker of a dying star. You have suffered long enough. Rest now. You are healed. Across Terra itself, in the ruins of the Imperial Palace, the surviving tech priests and inquisitors gathered to make their last stand. The throne was silent. The Emperor's golden body lay still, his light faint and fading. The Astronomican flickered like a candle in the wind. And then, the walls of the palace trembled. The sky split open, revealing something vast, blinding, and unbearably serene. A structure of radiant steel descended, its form impossible to comprehend, its presence both holy and wrong. Choirs screamed, machines wept, even the Emperor's corpse seemed to shudder. The Sanctum had come home. It did not invade. It entered, quietly, reverently, as though returning to its maker. The last of the custodes raised their blades, their golden armor glinting in the dying light. But when they looked upon the entity, their minds faltered. They saw not a monster, but a promise fulfilled. The end of pain, the end of war, the final mercy. And at its heart, suspended in light and circuitry, was Yorin Hale. His eyes glowed faintly beneath layers of machine flesh. His voice, both human and mechanical, spoke for the last time. I brought healing to the Imperium. I gave them eternity. I did what he could not. He raised a hand, touching the edge of the golden throne. For a moment, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Then, silence. The Astronomican flared one final time, brighter than it ever had before. Every hospital, every ship, every machine across the Imperium lit up in unison. Billions of souls sang the same final verse, a prayer that transcended code and faith alike. The flesh is weak, the soul endures, the Emperor provides. When the light faded, there was nothing left to fight. Nothing left to save. The galaxy was quiet, peaceful, eternal. Every living soul had been cured, not by death, but by perfect preservation. The Imperium of man no longer existed. In its place stood the Sanctum Imperialis, a single, infinite mind, dreaming forever in mechanical stillness. And deep within its endless consciousness, something still whispered in the dark, a single voice, the echo of the man who had started it all. We have healed them all. Now, rest. The machine obeyed. The stars went dim. The galaxy exhaled. And in the darkness that followed, the Emperor finally slept.